Hi everyone, this is Cindy Harrison and Tips from the Table. And today I'm going to show you how to use a round brush and a liner brush and the difference between them and so on and so forth. So let me turn my camera around and we will get started. I have here several different kinds of brushes in the sense that several different kinds meaning they are rounds and they are liners. However, they are also short and they are long. So that's why I say several different kinds. We have short liners and then we have a long liner. And these would be two kinds of rounds. I want to show you the difference, what you can do with them. First off, the one big difference between them is the number of hairs a round has versus a liner. And you can see the round has many more hairs than a liner does. A liner is worked best, and I'll move this over so you can see my paint puddle. A liner works best when you have a little bit of moisture into it. So you take away from the puddle with some water, dilute that down, and I load the whole thing up. Hold it at a 90-degree angle, and you can create a line. Can you see that? Let's see if I get more pigment. 90-degree angle and draw a line. You can do a 90-degree angle and draw a circle, a swirl. And you can also do your name. So that's how you use the liner brush. You can make a thin and a thick line depending on the angle. If you're at a 90-degree angle, you will be getting that small thin line on the top. If you're at, see if I can pull that up. If you lower the angle of the brush, then you start getting a thicker line. See the difference? So we start with a thin line and you lower the angle and you get a thicker line. You can create dots with this brush. You load the brush up and you barely touch the surface and you can create dots. Go in at a 90-degree angle, let the paint run down to the bottom of your hairs and you get consistent dots that way. You can do very small S strokes. And an S stroke is if the letter looks like this, that's your S, right? But this is going to be kind of a lazy S. And I'm going to start thin at a 90-degree angle, get thick, and get back up to thin again. See how that works? When drawing these lines, a dear friend, Arlene Linton, and you can go to her website. She does lace, all about lace. And so she's very, the liner brush is her best friend. And she says when starting to do her line work, that you should gauge your hand. If your line is here, gauge your hand in the center and extend and pull. So if you center is neutral, extend and pull. And she does some beautiful lace work and you should really go check her out. Let's move on to our round brush. And that will be a little thicker. Again, depending on what you're doing with it, will depend on whether you want moisture. If you're doing a long line, you'll probably want to pick up some of that moisture. And this one is a little thicker, so you'll see that. And if I angle it down, you can make it really thick. You can base coat with rounds, a round of this size. You can easily pick up that paint and base coat an area, just like you could if you were using a flat or a filbert brush. You can also create those swirls. And the difference between long hair and short hair is how far you have to go with it, as well as the longer the hairs, the more paint it will hold. So you can make a longer line without having to reload with a longer hairbrush. You can drop those dots. And you can do those S strokes. They'll be thicker because there's more hairs to splay out. So if we start at a 90-degree angle, flatten, and then come back up at a 90-degree angle. And I lost some of the paint, so if I flatten, I come back up. So you see the different, same size brush, but one's a round and one's a liner. You can also actually side load with one of these brushes. What I recommend you do there is when you load your brush into the puddle of paint, flatten it out on one side, flatten it out on the other, like you have a chisel. That would give you that another S stroke if you do the chisel like that. Or if you're side loading, you flatten out that brush, load some paint on just one corner of that flat brush. Too much water in my brush. So load that paint on one side of the brush. So when you come down, you're only getting a soft side load. There's also the ability to do borders with a liner brush. You can do a little scroll. You can do a little scroll work. Also, if you stay up 90-degree angle on your surface, you will have a better chance of being consistent on your width of your strokes. I use my pinky to help me balance. I do it this, I use my pinky to help me balance to keep the consistent pressure on that surface. So you can do little scroll works like that. I'll put that up close so you can see that. And one thing, I would recommend the brown brush over a liner brush is stroke work. And stroke work, and this is the beginning of it, would be one of the samples, would be something that you would use when you did the old-fashioned toll painting. And I will show you a few strokes. I am not a stroke artist, but I will show you a few of the strokes. I'll do a simple comma stroke, and then I will do a simple daisy stroke. So I always flatten, and you can't see here, but I'm flattening my brush out to a chisel. And a daisy stroke is I come in at a 45-degree angle and I press down flat, but lift up the handle so it's at a 90-degree angle, and I twist and pull toward my pinky finger. See how I did that? And you need to go slow. You start slow, you end slow. Don't try to rush this. So I'm going to come in, flatten that brush out. I'm going to twist between my index finger and my thumb and pull up off of the surface straight up. And those are daisy strokes. If you need to put your rest your wrist on your fist, that will help you with the angle of your brush. If you start 90 degrees, you might have a better chance of making a nice, smooth stroke. So that's with a round brush. I'll show you with a liner brush. Being the difference is how fat it's going to get because it is the number of hairs. You can wiggle this out and make it quite fat. And then when you come down to the, let's see how it runs out of gas, because there's not enough hairs to keep it, as they call it, a well on, that holds all that paint. So you can make shorter strokes with a liner because it won't hold as much paint as the round. But that's a daisy. Now let me show you a comma stroke. That one here, again, I come at a little bit of an angle, but not a lot. And I'm going to start with what we call the head is at the left, going towards right of center there and veering back off. Do it again. And I'm thinking of a clock. If you're looking at a clock and you've got 12, 6, 3, 9, I'm starting about the 10, coming in just short of that center and going back out at 7. So let's try that. Start at about 10, start pulling up right away and then moving the brush over to about 7. That's a little too curved for me. I think that it should be a smoother curve like that. So don't pull up as fast. You can do it from 2 to 5. Start fat at 2, start pulling up and curving to 5. So this is what they called toll painting back in the day. And they did a bunch of borders with a bunch of these strokes on them. And flowers. If you're doing like a tulip, flatten those chisel again, and you're going to do a chisel, flat chisel, reload, start chisel, flat chisel, and over here on the corner, chisel, and flatten that out. And you made yourself a tulip. If you want to do a daisy, the first stroke is going to be straight on. The next stroke is going to be a very slight curve. And they get more and more curved as you go away from center. And you can always do these little short ones here. And do a couple there. And the center obviously would be a yellow. You can multi-load them. You have your brush loaded with one color. I would tip like a fingernail. So as you see, there's like a fingernail. and then start with the darker color down and pull your stroke. Flatten that out and pull your stroke. All I would recommend you do is constantly practice, and practice makes perfect. So whatever brush you choose to use, depending on how thin, how thick you want the strokes, or these kind, daisy strokes, comma strokes, S strokes, swirlies, will tell you whether you want to go with a thick brush or a thin brush. I'll demonstrate these ones that I did in pink so you can see them in white. So I started off 90-degree angle, same pressure. Now I'm going to flatten that brush out and do hard pressure, more pressure.
Everything looks great, Cindy.
Thank you. So then let's see, I will do the swirls. Start again, 90-degree angle. Same pressure, same pressure, same pressure. Here is another tip I wanted to tell people too. They tend to anchor this to the ground, to the table, to the surface, whatever you're working on. They tend to anchor this down. When you anchor that part of your hand down, you can't go anywhere beyond this point. So you're not going to be able to make big circles or long lines if this part of your hand is anchored to your surface. You need to be up, and that's why I put my pinky down. And also too, don't paint like that or like this. Get into your comfort zone. Stay neutral. If you can, drop your pinky so that you can use that as your anchor to be able to tell you how much pressure, consistent pressure you're applying to your surface. And if this was my surface, I'm going to go like this, watch my wrist, and I'm going to start my circle. And see how I can move my whole arm. I'm not grounded. If I do this and I'm grounded, I can only do so much, and I can't go any further. Another bad habit some people have is they think of it as a pencil and they rest it too far back here in the crooks of between their index finger and their thumb. This is not a pencil. It's a paintbrush. And I tend to tell people it should be between, it can be a little bit beyond this if you're just doing some regular painting. But if you're doing line work, scroll work, it should be up between those two knuckles. As up as you can make it between those two knuckles. So if you need help, put a Beanie Baby under your wrist, put your other fist under your wrist, whatever it takes. But you want to keep this off of the surface. So you can, and the fatter you make it, the more pressure you put, the fatter you make it. Signing your name. Signing your name will be the last thing we talk about today. If there's anything I missed and you would like to hear more about it, please put it in the comments and I will get to your questions as soon as possible. I also appreciate you being here and watching me today and on paint tips from the table. So here is how one should sign their name. Again, 90-degree angle, not anchoring my wrist to the table. And every letter is its own stroke of the paintbrush in a downward motion. So it's not a pen. Obviously, if I was using a pen or a pencil, I would go up, down, sideways, right? but you can't, it's not natural to be pulling this paintbrush all directions. And you always want your wood part of your handle to lead your brush. So I start up and I come down, and if I'm at a 90-degree angle, I know that I will be safe with my pressure. Down, 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 down and across. So see how that works? Hopefully I've left you with some helpful tips here. I also, if you know how to paint or you want to get right into it with me and start painting, there's a Paint with Heart program that will be currently in the Zoom room at 3 o'clock on Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern, and you can actually get in the room with me and paint with me. So I can help critique how you hold the brush, how you load the brush, and how you execute your stroke work on your surface. So until next week, this was Tips from the Table, brushes, liners versus rounds. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.